Hello everyone, this video is going to cover the price elasticity of supply. Just like our consumers are responsive to changes in price, producers are also going to respond to these changes. Price elasticity of supply is going to measure the responsiveness of the quantity supplied to a change in price. So some determinants of price elasticity of supply are the flexibility of producers. More production flexibility will imply that firms are more able to respond when there are changes in price. And a firm is going to have a lot more production flexibility if they have spare capacity, maintain an inventory, and can relocate pretty easily. So De Beers Diamonds had raw, uncut diamonds in inventory that aren't put on the market just yet. And if the price goes up, it's very easy for them to put these diamonds up for sale. Hot dog vendors can also adapt pretty easily to changes in demand. It's really easy to relocate to a higher demand area where that price is actually higher. Now, sporting events, it's not really that easy to add more stadiums or even more seats within an existing stadium if the price per ticket goes up. And with fresh fish at the dock, what's available today is what's caught today, and they can't really change that very easily. The time and adjustment process is also something pretty important to think about when we're looking at the price elasticity of supply. In the immediate run, suppliers are stuck with what they have on hand and they can't really adjust. Now, the short run and long run, over time, we can adjust to market conditions and supply can become more elastic as we go on. Let's take a look at what this means graphically. So in the immediate run, there's going to be no change because we don't really have a lot of time to adjust. But as a supplier in the short run, we have a little bit more time to adjust. So QS will rise to Q2 and have a slight increase in that quantity supplied as those prices are going up. In the long run, we have even more time to adjust. So we're able to make a full adjustment and supply becomes more elastic as QS then moves all the way over and rises to Q3. So how can we calculate the price elasticity of supply? Well, this particular ratio will be positive because the law of supply is that there's a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. That is, as that price goes up, the quantity supplied will rise as well. This equation is very similar to one we've seen before. The numerator is just the change in the quantity supplied. So the percent change in quantity supplied divided by the percent change in price. You can see this abbreviated as the percent and then the triangle that means change in quantity supplied, or QS, divided by percent, the triangle for change in price. This is the last of the elasticity formulas that we'll see. So you should recognize these are all pretty similar and these should have a familiar look to them. We're measuring sensitivity of one variable, whether that's quantity demanded or quantity supplied, to a change in another like price, income, or the price of related good. And the midpoint method can be used for these particular calculations as well. So keep in mind, law of supply, positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. Now let's combine supply and demand. Previously, we've looked at shifts in demand and supply, and we've studied the changes in equilibrium price and quantity. But we want to know, how will the magnitude of the price and quantity changes be affected if we alter the demand or supply elasticity? So let's take a look at that graphically. Here we are in equilibrium with SR supply and D1 initial price, which are $60 per barrel, and Q1 barrels are sold. With this first click, economic development in China increases the demand for oil. So we want to know what's going to happen to equilibrium price and quantity. Well, the demand curve itself will shift to D2. The new equilibrium price will become $90 and our quantity rises to Q2. Over time, the supply of oil is more elastic and we can adjust to the higher price of oil by producing more. Our supply curve will get a little bit flatter and become SLR for supply in the long run. And then the long run equilibrium price will be $80 per barrel and our long run equilibrium quantity will be Q3. Now, the next question that we ask is, how do we decrease illegal drug use? So they asked, do you think the demand for illegal drugs is relatively elastic or inelastic, and why? The answer is that it's relatively inelastic. There's not really any substitutes. You can't go and find a legal version of any illegal drugs. And it may make up a small percent of people's discretionary income. Addiction is going to change your increase or cause an increase to your willingness to pay. And purchases are typically going to be made in the immediate or the short run. So, how can we decrease this? Well, if we wanted to enact a policy that had the following goals of decreasing drug consumption and making drug dealing a less attractive business, we want to know if we should try to decrease the supply of drugs or to decrease the demand of drugs. To decrease the supply of drugs, we would have tougher laws for drug dealers and maybe hire more police enforcement. And to decrease the demand for drugs, we would maybe look into drug education programs or offer some type of legal substitute activities that would decrease that drug demand. If we were to start with a decrease in supply, this would cause only a small decrease in drug transactions and an increase in drug prices. That would actually increase drug revenues, and it might actually make drug dealing look a little bit more lucrative in the long run, and it would definitely be a little bit more dangerous. Now, what if we tried to decrease demand by enacting these, counseling or offering legal alternatives? This would cause a larger decrease in drug transactions because there's a decrease in demand, and that leads to a decrease in prices. And that decrease in price would then lead to a decrease in revenues. Drug dealing would become a less appealing and less attractive career path, and it might be a better alternative than trying to mess with the supply. If we want to accomplish these two goals, our policy of decreasing drug demand would be better than trying to decrease the supply. And it would be better for us to use resources on education and legal substitutes instead of increasing penalties and police enforcement. Overall, from this chapter, you should keep in mind that elasticity is a measure of sensitivity or responsiveness between two variables. The ability to determine whether demand and supply are elastic or inelastic will allow us as economists to calculate the effects of personal, business, and policy decisions. And understanding elasticity will help our economic model say much more about the world than what we saw with just looking at changes in price alone. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, I'll talk with you in the next one. Thank you.